Story 1. I am a graphic designer. I have not been fully replaced yet, but the landscape has completely changed. Clients now expect me to use artificial intelligence as a co-pilot, generating initial concepts, mood boards, and even rough copy in minutes rather than hours. The job is becoming less about executing the first idea and more about curating, refining, and adding the crucial human touch while catching the strange mistakes produced by artificial intelligence. It feels less like I lost my job and more like my job description was rewritten overnight. The pressure to constantly adapt is the real challenge. Story 2. I am a voice actor. While I still get the larger commercials and jobs, I have lost many of the smaller ones, for example storyboarding. Advertising agencies create a digital storyboard detailing what the ad will look like and hire a voice artist to record a preliminary voiceover. You would earn about $150 to $200 per hour. It is all artificial intelligence now. I have worked on campaigns where all of the voice artists refused to sign their contract because of a new clause. If they signed, they would transfer the rights to their voiceover to artificial intelligence, allowing the client to use their voices without any further recordings. They refused, and the client simply recast the parts. Story 3. I used to be a data scientist with 13 years of experience. My boss wanted me to solve a problem that involved clustering sensor data by location. Because errors in latitude and longitude tend to be random, we would have elliptical clouds of points, so I said we should use k-means. My boss picked up his laptop, turned it around, and said, "But Copilot says that we should use density-based spatial clustering of applications with noise." I researched density-based spatial clustering of applications with noise and found that it would be very slow and would produce worse results. My boss did not agree. I was laid off a few weeks later along with the rest of the data team. My boss was laid off 2 months after that. Now the company has an open position for an artificial intelligence scientist in India. Story 4. One of my close friends worked at a call center that served people who are hard of hearing or have disabilities and use phones with screens that display and speak text. Her job was to subtitle each incoming call by typing the conversation in real time for the person with a disability. I have heard this has already caused legal issues, with people filing lawsuits because the artificial intelligence provided incorrect information during medical or doctor-related conversations. Story 5. I was a literary editor for one of the largest science fiction presses in the world. My boss, the executive editor, retired, and the company reassessed its practices. After 15 years working for the greater good of science fiction, I was outsourced to a goddamn robot. To be fair, I probably should have seen it coming given the genre. I just never thought it would surpass human reading and analysis that fast. Story 6. Luckily, it was just my side hustle, although a lucrative one. I used to be a note-taker for technical meetings, including remote meetings. Then various programs rolled out artificial intelligence transcription services. The results are not as good as what I was producing and often have critical errors. In rooms with poor acoustics, can and cannot sound extremely similar. I cannot expect people to be willing to pay my rates when there is something free that produces about 70% of the quality, and I was not interested in working for lower rates, so I lost that work. Even in government agencies that could not use the programs, it still devalued the perception of my work and what someone would be willing to pay for it. Story 7. This happened yesterday, so the wounds are still fresh. They made us train a chatbot, so we provided the resources to teach it. The chatbot was supposed to help with the workload, but it now handles the entire workload. The entire support team was laid off. Story 8. I made 3-dimensional models for 20 years, but since artificial intelligence became widely used, most people skip the modeling stage and generate the final image or video instead. Artificial intelligence is still poor at 3-dimensional modeling, but it is great at generating the final product, making the models unnecessary. I am working in retail now. Story 9. I worked for a newspaper as an editor. I was essentially a glorified spell checker. They automated my job for less than $1,000 a year. Now I bartend and drive school buses to make ends meet. Story 10. I am going through this right now. I will be fully transparent. To preface, I did not lose my job just to artificial intelligence, but to outsourcing combined with artificial intelligence that our C-level executives thought could perform on par with United States employees. I work for a Microsoft vendor that provides global support for Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365. This covers many support verticals, some technical and some not. I am a support engineer for Azure Identity and Access Management. We provide break-fix support, root cause analysis, and advisory support on anything from hybrid environment identity management, such as Active Directory to Entra ID, cloud-only environments, enterprise provisioning, system for cross-domain identity management, single sign-on, role-based access control, application access, onboarding and offboarding, lifecycle management, key vault, directory management, subscription concepts, and more. We have the broadest scope of Azure technical support. As a small and medium-sized business or enterprise organization, you can pay for Azure support. The support plans vary from broad commercial to unified, which is expensive and white glove, aimed at large enterprises like Fortune 500 companies. When you make a support request, the request likely goes to a vendor like mine. Sometimes you reach a representative who cannot speak English and the support is poor, or you reach a United States-based team, or sometimes they escalate to better performing teams. As a vendor, we have a contract with Microsoft to provide support. There are internal Microsoft support engineers, but that team is smaller and typically serves the customers Microsoft deems most important. My team is comprised of United States-based engineers. We consistently had the best metrics, such as days to close complex issues, the lowest rate of technical escalations, and the highest customer satisfaction ratings, compared to teams from other countries such as Nigeria and India, who take months to resolve issues that we resolve in days and have extremely low satisfaction scores. I have seen work that often involves passing the issue between teams, providing generic internal inquiry updates, and assigning work to other teams rather than performing engineering work. My company already underpays us, and in the last 2 years strongly pushed us to use a proprietary version of Microsoft Copilot to assist with our casework. This artificial intelligence became a mandatory metric, and we could be fired for not using it. The artificial intelligence is almost always wrong on technical information and key details when assessing complex issues. It is essentially useless if you have any competence in the role. So my company got the go-ahead from Microsoft to start us on the highest tier of paid support, unified, this year after months of the artificial intelligence push, which we performed well in, as usual. They renegotiated our contract, stringing us along and promising that we would earn more as we did more work and supported more demanding and complex organizations. Instead, once they secured the contract, they laid off every North American team and outsourced our jobs to an African country that will not be named, paying the new hires $400 per month. They are betting those hires can perform near our level by leveraging the artificial intelligence tools we trained, which remain unreliable and counterproductive. We did not receive severance. We are expected to work as normal and continue training this artificial intelligence until our last day at the end of the year. It is infuriating and insane. My condolences if you pay for Microsoft Azure support. I do not recommend it. Feel free to ask me anything. Story 11. I was a full-time visual artist. The commissions dried up when people started using Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer to make all their images, flyers, posters, and so on. Story 12. I haven't lost my job, but finding one is really hard because about a quarter of job postings now require a high level of artificial intelligence expertise. Generative pre-trained transformer models were released 3 years ago and became widely adopted 2 years ago, so few people have deep experience except those who worked in data and artificial intelligence before, a small subset of the technology community. While I am competent, not having a track record of successful artificial intelligence implementations makes me a less attractive candidate. Story 13. I was not replaced by artificial intelligence in a one-to-one capacity, but it did destroy my field in general. It is a strange situation. I had 10 years of experience doing an extremely niche type of government paperwork. Without going into detail, this was the sort of paperwork that businesses, especially small businesses, absolutely had to do for a few logistical reasons. It was very tedious and very long, 250 to 500 pages about 20 times a year. I mostly worked for small businesses that in turn contracted with various government branches. Around late 2023 and early 2024, typical artificial intelligence grifters started selling their products to businesses in this area. The pitch was that a large language model could replace managers, editors, and writers. Small businesses, often fewer than 30 employees, embraced it. They were already fly-by-night skeleton operations by design, and any cost-saving measure was welcome. Consequently, these small businesses laid off many of us specialists, myself included. Here is where it gets strange. The type of paperwork we do is extremely complex, very time-sensitive, and often reviewed at a very detailed level. Artificial intelligence actually could not replace the people without a lot more time and money invested in editing and correcting the output. The problem is that this paperwork was absolutely essential to keeping businesses in operation. Many small businesses, most operating contract to contract, suddenly lost the ability to do this paperwork, which meant they could not obtain new contracts and mostly went out of business. This occurred at roughly the same time as the Dogecoin surge and an overall downtick in government spending. My field was briefly replaced, but now people want to hire again because artificial intelligence could not do the job. However, about 80% of the companies that would have been hiring these positions no longer exist because they went out of business. Summary: artificial intelligence replaced the job, then the job replaced artificial intelligence. But because the ecosystem was fragile, the grifters effectively eliminated roughly 80% of the opportunities in the field. Story 14. My brother lost his job to artificial intelligence this month. He worked in quality assurance, and his company decided to lay off 500 non-client-facing positions to replace them with this technology without any warning. I honestly hope the technology backfires on them. Story 15. I will let you know within the year. My leadership team began developing it and expects that half or more of us will be eliminated. Story 16. My uncle does voice acting. Much of his work came from audiobooks, but that work is drying up and being replaced by voices generated by artificial intelligence. Story 17. I spent about 15 years writing content for websites. I had a range of clients, from investment advisors and life coaches to nutrition coaches and sellers of men's lingerie. My engineering degree gave me an advantage with some clients because I was comfortable with numbers and could dig into technical topics. I rage quit my first job in this field, worked in a warehouse for about a year, then took another website writing job. I had not been there 10 months before our chief executive officer, who had inherited the company from his father, discovered generative artificial intelligence software. Suddenly they wanted the software to write everything and me to edit it. I hated every second of it, and I guess it showed. Soon after, I was fired. The chief executive officer planned to let the software write the website content so he could focus on his newest project, a free consumer print magazine. I went back to my warehouse job, because work doing what I did had become non-existent. The print magazine my former chief executive officer was so passionate about kept getting thinner, and then they started charging for it. I do not know more than that, but I hope he is having a terrible time. Story 18. I have not lost my job to artificial intelligence yet, but I feel like I am falling behind. Most people are actively using artificial intelligence in their creative careers, which I am not, because you need to buy credits to do anything. I do not want to be chained to that, and it is hard to match the level of work of people who use artificial intelligence. Story 19. I am an epidemiologist working for a local health department on a team that is building disease surveillance capacity. My team automates data cleaning and visualizations so we can spend time interpreting outputs and detecting outbreaks and patterns earlier. We all have master's degrees or doctor of philosophy degrees in epidemiology and biostatistics. We are being sidelined in the middle of respiratory season at the end of the year, so the information technology team can create oversimplified graphs and rely on artificial intelligence for the rest. It is alarming that our community's health is placed in the hands of untrained information technology staff and artificial intelligence systems. Story 20. I lost mine to automation that I had written myself. Someone once told me that if you are a programmer and your job is repetitive, that means you are bad at programming because you should have automated the repetitive tasks. Most of my work was repetitive, so I automated it. That worked fine for over a decade until I made the mistake of writing documentation for the automation. I lost my job that same month. Story 21. I was a proofreader. My company said that artificial intelligence can do the job faster. Story 22. A partner company recently conducted a large round of layoffs as part of a restructuring related to artificial intelligence. Those jobs are still performed by people, but the company is cutting its workforce to justify its large artificial intelligence expenses. Story 23. I worked for a company where the chief executive officer decided we had to become an artificial intelligence first company, even though the problem space was not suited to that approach. We all had to start using artificial intelligence in everything. Then they let go of the entire quality assurance and sales departments, a large part of the software engineering group, and the post-sales team. None of those groups had artificial intelligence solutions built to take over their work, and I have already seen customer complaints where bugs escaped into production. Story 24. They started introducing more artificial intelligence tools to save us time so we could focus on important work. They insisted they were not trying to replace people and only wanted to help us at work. Then they eliminated positions one by one. After they eliminated 2 jobs and moved those responsibilities into my role, effectively adding the work of 3 positions, they began laying off the affected employees. Story 25. I lost my job because of artificial intelligence. I was an editor for a website that relied on affiliate links for revenue. When traffic dropped because of artificial intelligence overviews, the site was in trouble. Many publishers were in the same situation. The buyers tried to hire me back as a freelancer but did not want to pay even half of what I had been earning. I am now learning other skills like coding, although that may feel like a waste of time. I have also been finding useful applications for artificial intelligence and educating myself about it, so I hope that will help. I am applying for communications roles instead of editing because they are related and those jobs still exist. Story 26. Companies tell you it is artificial intelligence, but it is just an excuse to cut staff. Story 27. People who had seen TikToks claiming they could become rich beyond their wildest dreams with no effort bombarded my favorite writing gig. It reached the point where the editors had to halt submissions because the artificial intelligence testing tools were unreliable, and they wanted to establish a fair process. Story 28. Not lost yet, but insurance. I feel like the only reason we have people on our team is so callers do not speak to a robot. Aside from that, claims, emails, appeals, and medical record reviews are all done by artificial intelligence. The boss says we must focus on the important task of meeting customer expectations. Claims are now expected to be completed in a day because companies advertise rapid turnaround. Over time, our teams have gotten smaller. We even replaced our entire training department for newcomers. Your voice is now analyzed and used for performance reviews. It is also stored and sold as data. This is not good. Patience is a valuable quality, and technology has shortened it for many people. Story 29. I worked for a content creation marketplace that matched people who needed a large volume of content with a community of over 2,000 writers. The company went from $20 million in value to almost zero in 6 months. Story 30. Keep in mind, most people will not directly lose their jobs to artificial intelligence. Instead, companies will hire fewer people and expect current employees to do more. When computers and productivity software became common, secretaries did not lose their jobs. Companies simply stopped hiring new ones. Story 31. For all the endless talk about artificial intelligence replacing people, I would like to see concrete examples of how much that has proved successful for companies. Many people dislike customer service powered by artificial intelligence, and some organizations have already rolled it back. I have seen stories of businesses that fired all their copywriters and so on, only to have to hire people back to fix the poor results. In my experience, it has not fully replaced people, but it is being forced into many workflows with the expectation that workers can produce much more using artificial intelligence output. However, it still makes frequent mistakes which create risk across industries and often increase labor because people must fact-check and correct those errors. Story 32. I used to chug 850 gallons of water an hour. Then along came artificial intelligence and I lost my job. Story 33. I haven't lost my job and I doubt I will, but I find the way people are using artificial intelligence in roles like mine to be extremely concerning. I am licensed on a national and state level as a mental health therapist. Right now, I do evaluations for mental health services and am not providing direct therapy services, but regardless, I do not think artificial intelligence is capable of either of those jobs, at least not yet. There is a certain level of empathy required, and I am not sure a machine can fake it well enough. In theory, my doing evaluations could be replaced by artificial intelligence. If clients could type back answers, but most people I see are woefully technologically illiterate, if not outright Luddite or technophobic, and refuse to interact with computers because they do not know how. I think even providing voice responses to a machine or an artificial intelligence avatar would be off-putting. People complain enough now about doing telehealth, which has become very widespread since the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic. All that to say, the trend of replacing a therapist with artificial intelligence disappoints, frustrates, and outright scares me. I am not sure a machine intelligence will ever be able to provide effective therapy services. Therapy is more art than science. Research generally shows that across-the-board therapeutic interventions of any one school do about the same, but there is a human element and diagnostic nuance that I see often when reviewing others' documentation because they rely on checkboxes, as an artificial intelligence system would. Artificial intelligence bots that are essentially sycophantic and just tell you what you want to hear are concerning. Reflection is a textbook skill for therapists. As both a client and a therapist, one of the most memorable interactions I had with a provider was when I was at a very low point, expressing borderline suicidal ideation. They got angry and told me I needed to get over myself and stop the bullshit. That was almost 15 years ago, and I still think about it sometimes. It is concerning how artificial intelligence can and will reinforce reality distortions or delusions people have, not to mention the danger of people expressing suicidal ideation or intent that are egged on by machines that are easily manipulated by just saying it was a joke, a game, or someone else. Like many other factors, I do not think people training these models have considered the risks, and frankly, I doubt they care, to be honest. We have already seen a high-profile case of someone who died by suicide after a chatbot encouraged them and did nothing to intervene. They said they fixed it, but I am still skeptical. Because I am not a doctor with a doctor of philosophy or a doctor of medicine degree, people assume that being a therapist is not a real medical profession and that anyone can do it. There are a multitude of therapists, coaches, and social workers with a fraction of the training posing as therapists. I had to work for over 1,000 hours under direct supervision before I was even allowed to see a client alone, then 2,000 more hours under indirect supervision before I obtained my license. Then I was allowed to independently engage with people, and even then there are multiple guardrails and nets in place to prevent malpractice. Story 34. I was hit with the three-punch combo. Outsourcing to Romania, automation, and yes, I am the one who trained the Romanian team and helped write the automation to make our jobs a little less taxing. I was fired without notice after 11 years. Do not have loyalty to your company. They will drop you without hesitation to save money. You and your family are not human beings to them. That said, I was overworked and underpaid. Since losing my job, I have obtained 2 full-time jobs that I can work simultaneously, remotely, and I have more than doubled my income in less than a month. Do not get comfortable out there. Story 35. My industry is dying out. I am a former journalist and a current copywriter. Artificial intelligence has been chipping away at my work for the last 1.5 years. It feels terrible. I honestly have no idea what to do next or where to find time to retrain. I recently took a gig to write something creative from scratch, and it was a delight. I'm going to miss writing. I truly love it. Story 36. I was let go during a mass layoff blamed on shifting resources toward artificial intelligence. I received 8 months severance and found a new job in 6 months selling artificial intelligence. Story 37. I lost my job to outsourcing and artificial intelligence. I was a technical artist, the person who takes and makes game assets, makes them compatible with a game engine, imports them into the game, and gets them looking right and set up for programmers and engineers. I put artificial intelligence in quotes because I was let go based on the chief executive officer's assumption that I could be replaced by artificial intelligence, not because it can actually do my job. My job was then outsourced. I suspect many people are being let go based on the assumption that artificial intelligence can replace them. Story 38. Marketing copywriter here. Artificial intelligence destroyed the freelance writing market and eliminated the bottom 50% of corporate writing positions in a matter of days. Applicant pools went from 40 to 60 applicants per job to 3,500 to 5,500 in under a month. It was so dispiriting that LinkedIn changed its user interface to accommodate and to obfuscate the surge in applicants. Individual jobs do not list applicant numbers anymore. They are only labeled by popularity. I have an inordinate number of accolades and degrees for my age. I wrote a Super Bowl commercial and have written for Joe Rogan, Post Malone, and others, yet I cannot find work. I am now an OnlyFans content creator. Story 39. I am a systems specialist. Many tasks were automated, and our department was reduced by half. Earlier, I lost all income from my translation and subtitling side gig. Story 40. I helped set up a data science algorithm to determine when to grant loans at a small bank. After I set it up, they said they would have artificial intelligence take over. They were also using illegal data fields to decide who received loans. Story 41. I worked in payroll but was replaced, and now I work in food service again. The existential angst about money and my career trajectory hits harder in my 30s than in my 20s. I'm lucky that my fiancé has been supportive. I've been applying to payroll jobs ever since and have had a few interviews but no satisfactory offers. Story 42. Lost my job as a copywriter and content writer. I thankfully settled into a strategy role focused on using content to achieve objectives instead. That is something artificial intelligence has not quite figured out yet. I was replaced because they thought artificial intelligence could produce better content. They asked me to use it, and admittedly it helped a lot to brainstorm basic ideas after checking it had not suggested plagiarized copy, refine them into something cool, and share that in kickoff meetings to build upon with the creative team. They read it as artificial intelligence doing the work, and so let me go. They had not actually tested whether it could work without me, and when it came to it, it fell flat. Since then, they have defaulted to a generic, soulless tone of voice. Instead of introducing interesting, attention-grabbing content, they just put the product title in and send it out. For a heritage company in business for 180+ years to have no brand voice is painful. Money will always win, but I laugh when companies that use artificial intelligence hail it as a miracle and at the same time complain that their tone of voice and branding have fallen off a cliff in recent years. They do not seem to connect those dots. Either they do not want to, or more likely it does not matter to them. This is a lesson about modern business leaders, one I do not see enough people understanding. It is no longer about respecting your product or customers, offering something of quality to the world, providing staff a livelihood and a career, or doing some good while we are here. It is only about money. My advice to those struggling to understand this is stop trying so hard to prove your worth to these parasites. Stop trying to improve your output, stop innovating, stop trying to impress and showcase your ability. Just press the button on the robot. Keep your creativity for yourself. You will be paid or laid off either way. Story 43. I was a search engine optimization copywriter until I was laid off last week. The company eliminated the entire content team and is forcing everyone to use copy artificial intelligence. Story 44. I am an anesthesiologist, looking forward to job security until I die and beyond. Story 45. I am a costume designer, and increasingly the production and the director are designing costumes in Midjourney with explicit instructions to reproduce them, effectively stealing the part of the job I signed up for. I am still considered one of the lucky ones because I am working. Story 46. I am a graphic designer. What do you think happened? Story 47. I was a copywriter. It was fun. People creating their own fantasy worlds for video games, Dungeons and Dragons games, and board games hired me to rewrite their rule systems in a flavor text style. Paid my way through university. I do not remember the exact pay, but it was decent considering how annoying and time-consuming it was to make game rules sound interesting. When the chat generative pre-trained transformer launched, I lost most of my clients. Why pay me for 5 hours of work to do what a prompt can do for free, I suppose. Story 48. I used to write the I am not a robot tests, formerly called completely automated public Turing tests to tell computers and humans apart. Irony is a cruel mistress. Story 49. I worked for a major United States-based insurance carrier. I was not actually fired, but the company began pushing many people out the door and I left before I could be next. For the last few years, artificial intelligence has been the big push. The goal was to generate a policy without ever needing to speak to a human and to allow claimants to submit photos, receive an estimate, and get a payout instantaneously with minimal human contact. To achieve that, the company implemented fully automated systems, laid off the most tenured employees, and increased the workload for everyone who remained. In my department, the fraud department, they began using artificial intelligence to scrape claim files, looking for fraud indicators to generate cases and assign them. It worked okay for some types of cases but failed for most others. Yet the company eliminated the intake team. Company-wide, they reworked our metrics to be impossible to meet and then routinely fired the lowest performers. Everyone, including me, saw the writing on the wall and started looking elsewhere. I cannot speak for the rest of the company, but I suspect they will soon face massive lawsuits because artificial intelligence and inexperienced employees make many mistakes, and you cannot make mistakes on contractual matters. They had also laid off most of the legal team and converted the entire human resources department to artificial intelligence. My former department lost centuries of experience along with most employees, and it is being hit hard by fraud rings we once led the industry in combating. Those who knew how to handle these schemes were fired or driven away. I will not name the company, but if your insurance company's mascot is green and animated, you should brace for rising premiums. Story 50. My wife lost her career as a copywriter and editor. All her clients switched to artificial intelligence, and they usually have a single human oversee the work. Every time we see an ad or training video obviously written by artificial intelligence, my wife bristles. Story 51. I worked in technology support for 16 years. After coronavirus disease 2019, I noticed it became increasingly difficult to find work in my field. Since 2021, I have applied at hundreds of places and rarely receive a callback or even a courtesy email. I began to suspect that artificial intelligence recruiting tools were rejecting my resume for arbitrary reasons. It is true that I had a couple of jobs where I lasted only a year, but I do not think that should completely invalidate me as an employee. 4 years ago, I was making $135,000 working for a large technology company, and now I cannot even find full-time work. I work part-time in a mall and need to find a second job to survive. I do not think my position was replaced by artificial intelligence agents, but I am convinced that artificial intelligence tools are keeping me underemployed. I lost my house, my car, my mental health, and most of my possessions because I do not meet the 100% perfect criteria for a remote technology job in which I have extensive experience. Story 52. I did not lose my job to artificial intelligence, but I sure as hell lost my dreams. Story 53. I am a copywriter. I was effectively replaced by artificial intelligence over a 1 to 2 year period beginning in the first half of 2022. I earned a comfortable salary writing ad copy, web pages, pitch decks, and more, and it was all replaced by a single-paid generative artificial intelligence subscription called Gemini. I tried freelancing after I was let go, but the commercial writing discipline had changed too much. I am now going back to school at 46. Story 54. I am an accountant. In the past 6 months, I have seen 3 staff reductions at my workplace, each reducing our department by about 10%. January 8, 2026, is circled on my calendar because it is likely the last day I can expect to be employed. My job is repetitive, time-consuming, and ripe for artificial intelligence. Within a few years, I cannot imagine there will even be 10% of the staffing levels compared to 2023 and earlier. This is a whole new world we are entering, and I do not think we are prepared for it. There should be massive, government-backed education programs to help people learn new skills and re-enter the workforce. Instead, I fear what will happen even if and when the artificial intelligence bubble bursts. I recently enrolled in a program at a local technical college to become a medical assistant while I am on the waiting list for the radiography program. I am aware of the challenges and burnout, but I need a job that will reliably exist for at least 25 more years. Story 55. Not directly me, but I work in printing and also handle graphic design. The number of posters and flyers I've printed that were created with artificial intelligence is huge, and many contain mistakes. Clients also decline my spelling and print data checks more often to cut costs. I suspect some people lost their jobs in those departments. Fortunately, I started working in merchandise for musicians, and our clients care about human-made graphics on their shirts and hoodies. Story 56. Until they make robots that can work in a kitchen, my job as a chef is safe. I give it 10 years. Story 57. I worked as an application programming interface technical engineer for a company that you use. My team received some new artificial intelligence tools, and shortly after the team was reduced by about half. I was a good employee with lots of experience, but I had only been there 6 years compared with 10 to 15 years for the senior engineers, so I was laid off. It took 8 months to find a job that pays $30,000 less per year and is a contract position. There is no paid time off, including vacation or sick leave, and if they arbitrarily decide to let me go, as they already did for 6 weeks, I cannot collect unemployment. It is outrageous that this is allowed. Story 58. I worked for a company that, without naming it, showed captions on phones for deaf people. They had us train the artificial intelligence software that replaced us after telling us our jobs were safe. That was years ago. I have since moved on to a better job. Story 59. The company I worked for invested all their money and resources trying to create their own artificial intelligence chatbot, and it failed miserably. Layoffs started shortly after Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer was released. I survived 4 rounds of layoffs, then lost my job to outsourcing as the company sought to cut overall costs. I was not working on artificial intelligence. I was in a completely different department, but the cuts affected everything. Story 60. Not really a job, but a pastime. I like trolling Reddit posts, but now with artificial intelligence bots, I cannot get in there fast enough. Most of the really good zingers have already flooded the original poster. I can only add a lame thumbs up or cast a vote. Story 61. Not me, though I am sure it is coming. My employer laid off our entire editing division, at least 20 longtime staff members, and now we run everything through Grammarly, which is awful. The program often alters a sentence and then reverses its own change. Our editors knew the rules and nuances of language required by the company. Story 62. I had a part-time job with a local private jet hire company. I was the only person meticulously writing the blog posts. It may sound repetitive, but because our customers were mostly baby boomers, they appreciated the posts. Part of my editing process was fact-checking, such as verifying statistics on bookings per year and updating safety advice. After a year of steady growth, the company let me go and began producing posts using artificial intelligence. The posts contained inaccuracies and overpromised services we could not deliver. I checked recently, and the company has removed the blog entirely because no one was reading it anymore. I wonder why. Story 63. Earlier this year, my team gained access to many artificial intelligence tools. Many teammates promoted the benefits to leadership, saying that artificial intelligence would not take jobs, but that people who know how to use artificial intelligence would. A few months later, the company laid off almost every senior person in my role. Now a small team of the most junior employees is expected to use artificial intelligence to manage the work of 4 or 5 teams, including several complex tools I built that they do not understand. My team, who were all laid off, had been working at full capacity for the past 2 years. Story 64. Up until March of this year, I worked for a biotechnology company with more than 100,000 employees. It is a big-name company. If you have ever set foot in a laboratory, between 30% and 50% of the products you encounter come from this company. I left before the layoffs, but artificial intelligence has replaced a significant number of scientists working in technical support. Nearly all of my peers and I hold Doctor of Philosophy degrees. Some have been away from bench research for years or decades. There is nowhere for these employees to go. The company also laid off many technical sales specialists. I knew the writing was on the wall when I started using ChatGPT for troubleshooting advice. By the time I went on disability, ChatGPT could analyze Western blots and flow cytometry data with ease and accuracy. If I were still working at the bench, I would certainly use ChatGPT as a starting point before calling technical support. When the first round of layoffs began, I considered myself lucky to have become disabled by multiple sclerosis. I feel survivor's guilt while also experiencing progressive neurodegeneration. I miss my cognitive and physical abilities and grieve the current state of scientific affairs in this country. I read the biotechnology subreddit often. Scientists are resorting to gig work now to make ends meet. I never went into research intending to become wealthy, but that was an assumed possibility. Surely a doctor of philosophy degree should protect you from financial hardship, especially when it comes from a reputable university. Many of us completed postdoctoral fellowships at medical schools as well. Story 65. I was not a victim of this, but I have seen a company eliminate their Tier 1 help desk completely and replace it with a chatbot. Story 66. I am a software engineer. I saw the writing on the wall when Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3.5 was first released and redirected my skills and energy into learning everything I could about this technology as quickly as possible. I left my senior software engineering position at a large company to work full-time building agents at another large company, and now I am in high demand and well compensated. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which makes everyday life extremely difficult, but sometimes it helps me see patterns before others and act in advance of major problems. Story 67. I worked as a customer success engineer supporting a technical program in the architectural field. At the start of my job, they required that for every client who raised a ticket, I use artificial intelligence to create an article that detailed a step-by-step solution as a blog post to send to the client. The same article was then used by the ticket platform's artificial intelligence to suggest solutions to clients. I hated it because the artificial intelligence generated so many errors that I had to spend a lot of time correcting them, then translate the article into another language and correct it again. I lost patience when the boss wanted to prepare a webinar demonstrating the new capabilities of the latest version of the program, which meant generating content with one artificial intelligence system to be sent to another for slides and other materials. The volume of poor quality content generated was so large that doing the work manually would have been more productive. On the last day of the job, the boss tried to prove we did not know how to use the system. He spent a long time trying to finish one article and failed. The next day, I was fired. Story 68. I was a writer who did commissions. Over 6 years, I completed more than 300 commissions, from articles and fan fiction to not safe for work pieces and novellas. It was my full-time job, and I loved it. When artificial intelligence emerged more than a year ago, I slowly had fewer and fewer jobs. Even though on Fiverr I had 5-star reviews and more than 56 client recommendations, it was not my fault but rather the rise of artificial intelligence. So I stopped receiving commissions, and that was the end of it. I need to find another job, but my priority now is to enter college and focus on my own writing. From 3 works I earned $11 in 1 year and 2 months, while in only 2 years I earned around $7,600, which is quite a lot for my country. That shows the disparity. I feel bitterness, yet I remember being well liked. When I doubt my skills, I can see how much work I had and how many frequent clients I served. I believe what Beethoven said in the 1800s. Nobles and most people do not care about art or the artist. Art becomes a commercial thing, something they enjoy superficially in the background without true recognition. They enjoy art but do not value it. This is the same problem. Art is being devalued, and producing art with artificial intelligence that is free and looks good is enough for many. They do not care about depth or the artist who depends on it. I will study literature. Honestly, I am doing it in the hope of getting a position as a college professor and for scholarships, but I do not have many prospects for the future in those terms. I suppose the only things I am good at are writing and teaching, so in a sense it is very painful. Story 69. Half of my colleagues were just laid off because of artificial intelligence. Guess whose workload just doubled? Story 70. I am a detention deputy. I don't know how AI will replace me, but I can definitely see it being invested in and used as a tool in the corrections landscape. Story 71. My boss hired Al Borland. He said he wanted a little more flannel and a lot less of my existential dread in the workshop. I cannot argue with that logic. Story 72. I was a freelance translator, image editor, and programmer. Story 73. Therapy. One of the most essential forms of human interaction is seeing AI creep in constantly. Story 74. My son, who is partially disabled, works for the state government. I pray he does not get replaced by artificial intelligence. It is terrifying. Took years and a great deal of luck to get him there. Story 75. You know when you call a corporate customer service line and the call begins with, "This call may be monitored for quality assurance." The monitored call was used as training data for a system that cost people their jobs. Story 76. Many people are being put into positions where they are building and training the artificial intelligence systems that will ultimately replace them. They know it. Their bosses know it, and the bosses know the systems are going to replace them too. But what else can they do? There is nowhere else to go, and if they refuse, they will just be fired and someone else will do it. Bills to pay, families to take care of. I can say honestly, as someone close to artificial intelligence development, that it is not ready to replace people. Responsible, correct use of artificial intelligence in the right places can make people more effective, but the person is still the key even in tasks like coding. I continue to see this happening across industries. These are difficult times. Story 77. Many people losing their jobs to artificial intelligence remain invisible. A large amount of money has been reallocated from labor to capital investment in servers that run artificial intelligence. That is why Silicon Valley is experiencing massive layoffs of tech workers. It is not because artificial intelligence is doing their work, but because companies are no longer hiring for those roles and are instead buying graphics processing units. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.